Good afternoon, Las Vegas. This is Clark coming to you with Be Heard, a radio show for the people to call in and let us know what you think about what's happening, and hopefully you might have a solution or two that we can keep track of here at the Herd and see what are the leading solutions that people would like to put forth and be heard about. And when we have elected officials and we have enough clout by the Herd itself, we can get some of these ideas and solutions before them and make sure that they do something about it, or they won't be reelected. That's the concept. Anyways, give us a call, 702-493-5222, and let us know what your solutions are for America and the situation that we have got ourselves in by electing people that aren't competent. They're not capable of doing anything other than working for special interest groups to pay them off to do the job of them instead of the job of the people of the United States that elected them to the office. Every person that we elect to a position of power gets hijacked, and then they're no good for us anymore. They become puppets of the special interest groups, and we end up with the mud and the crap that we've been putting up with for years. And what happens is the country goes deeper and deeper and deeper in debt, like to the $20 trillion that we are now, with no hope of getting out of debt. And the solutions are just more of the problems. And we're at a point, a crossroads, where the solutions are not going to help us. So we need people to call in and at least join the group, join the Herd, become part of the H-E-R-D, the herd of people that are going to be heard, H-E-A-R-D, because our voices will be heard again somehow, some way. I hope it doesn't take getting out pitchforks and sickles to have another revolution in the world, but something's going to have to be done, because we are going in lockstep as fast as we can right towards a cliff, and it's not a pretty picture. And we've let this go on way, way too long. We have to nip things in the bud and not ever let this happen to us again, if we should ever be lucky enough to get it straightened out this time. But it's going to take a lot of work. And there's some things we can do. Our number one solution right now is to get rid of the political parties. We have a Democrat Party and we have a Republican Party. What for? They're just conduits of special interest money. The money goes into the conduits, and then the money is paid to political people that have been elected. They hijack them. They take their brains, insert the ideas and what they're going to do from the special interest, and that's what gets done. We end up with planes being built by the manufacturing companies that have ties to the legislators and the Congress and senators via way of these envelopes, and they end up building the types of planes that the company wants to build because it gives them billions of dollars in cash, and they can sprinkle that around and keep the gravy train going for the elected officials. And you end up with planes that won't fly because the generals and the people that are in charge of flying these planes don't want these planes. The senators and congressmen that get the big donation envelopes, they're the ones that want these planes because that makes the money flow to them. It's all corruption. This country is as corrupt as any country probably before it. It's supposed to be a free country. Well, we're losing our freedom because the corruption has taken over this country. The money has bought this country. And as evidence, look at what Hillary Clinton has amassed since her and her husband got out of the White House. They were stone cold broke, remember, if you can believe anything that Hillary Clinton ever says. And then now there was several $100 million, for sure, and maybe $1 billion or so because there's no accounting going on because they have a D next to their name. They just completely walk above the law. She flaunts it. I mean, it's incredible how this lady can be running for president. She's the most corrupt individual ever, coming from a corrupted administration of her husband's that was getting serviced in the White House instead of taking care of business, and renting out the Lincoln bedroom at election time to get donor money any which way they can by selling secrets, U.S. secrets to the Chinese. I mean, you can't get more despicable than these people. And here we are considering electing another one? You got to be kidding me. This is unimaginable to me. But that's where this country's gone. We're completely lost in the wilderness of progressivism. And that is policies and so forth that do not work. At least they've never worked anywhere in the world where they've been tried. There's not one success that any of these progressives can point to. That's why they don't want their children in school reading history books. That's why they don't want any teachers in school actually teaching things of history or what's gone on or the right things to do or common sense. They want their progressive liberal ideology taught in schools, and you end up with a bunch of mush coming out of college now living in their parents' basement because they can't get jobs, because the progressives have ruined the economy, sent all of our jobs overseas with a radical tax policy that they have that taxes entrepreneurs from creating things and being productive. They flush them out of the country with high taxation. None of these policies make any sense. They're completely contrary to what makes the world go around, and that's money and production, producing things and selling it to people that need it. We've turned into the old Roman Empire before they collapsed. Rome used to be a big producer. They made a lot of money, then they turned into a bunch of fat orgy-goer-twos that would sit around and have grapes stuffed in their mouth all day long, and they became a country of consumers and not producers. And then when they didn't have any money, they couldn't buy anything anymore, and the whole country collapsed. That's what we're going for. Our progressive leaders have taken up the position that they want to be Santa Claus to buy votes, and they promise things like free food, welfare, free houses, free college, free Obama phones, all this free stuff, because all they want is to get your vote. They don't care how it works. The promises they make, they never keep. So what's the difference? They'll tell you anything to get elected. And even after they're elected, they'll tell you anything right to your face, like Hillary Clinton did to Mrs. Smith, of that dead war hero that was killed in Benghazi. She told him it was a video and we're going to get the people that made that video. That was an out and out despicable lie. And she said it right to the face of a mother of one of the dead soldiers at the soldier's funeral, is where they were told this. I mean, unbelievable. She goes on Chris Wallace the other day on a Sunday and tells Chris Wallace, well, that Mrs. Smith's a nice person. I got nothing against, you know, I respect her, this and all this crap she throws out there. And then she says, you know, after losing a son and so forth and going through all that stress and turmoil, Mrs. Smith probably didn't hear me clearly, or she misunderstood what I really told her. This is a despicable, despicable, lying person. Who would believe that? When she's on tape, on video, she said this to the American people, the same thing that she told Mrs. Smith, who somehow now just didn't understand what she was being told. What a disingenuous piece of crap this lady is. And I'll say it, she is the worst. And you know, you hear all this mainstream media downgrading Trump because they're part of the whole establishment deal that don't want Trump around because Trump's going to change things. And they don't want anything to change. They want Washington to go the way Washington's been going. Special interest, big money, buy off, pay off. That's some reason the mainstream media supports that. I don't understand it, but they're no longer the press. They no longer just report news. They put their spin and their lies on everything. They're complete liars. These polls, does anybody out there believe these polls where Hillary Clinton's up double digits after the fiasco of a convention they had? The first two nights, you couldn't find an American flag. Couldn't find one. The last night, you couldn't see anything but American flags. These people are just hypocrites. They pander. You know, Hillary Clinton with hot sauce in her purse when she's talking to a group of black people. I mean, come on, give me this. Then she starts talking like one with a drawl of You know, come on, they're just such liars. Trump gets up there, he doesn't change his speech, he doesn't pander to anybody, he's not politically correct, he says things the way he believes them to be. I don't think anyone can say that what he says he doesn't believe, he does. And then the mainstream media says, oh, 75% of the people believe he's a liar. Well, call into the show, tell me one lie the man said. 702-493. And I don't ban all religions and this and that. The man never said it. Not even remotely close to that. You listen to what the man says, and it's taken out of context, and it's spun around, and it's changed into something that it's not. That's what the mainstream media does. They're vicious. They're probably 95% of the problem of this country, along with there being too start with that we need to make into illegal or made illegal. They have gone cases before to the Supreme Court. Issue of the illegality of political parties, and the Supreme Court saying that these parties have the First Amendment rights like citizens do. Organization, the Supreme Court, and it comes from common sense. If we are the people, if this country was made any organization or anyone else, you have the right to free speech. Trump's thing else. Now the Supreme Court weighing in that an organization has a right to free speech too, fine, but it Trump speech of the American people. And what do these organizations do? You elect as the free people of this country, you elect your officials, and these organizations steal your elected officials. They pay them off with envelopes stuffed with cash, and now they're working for special interest groups. That's what these organizations, these corrupt organizations do. They buy your candidates. That to me trumps our First Amendment rights, and that organization should go. It should be made an illegal enterprise is what it is, and they should be outlawed. Pure and simple. They trump our rights, they're gone. And this is the type of common sense thinking that we have to get back to, because this country is in a lot of difficulty where we're being led by people that have an agenda. Their agenda is to buy votes, to make promises they have no intention of keeping, ever. They just say whatever they want to say. You listen to a Hillary Clinton speech, there's absolutely nothing in there of substance. It's all rhetoric, it's all talking points. Like she's going to create millions of jobs. I'm going to create millions of jobs. Okay, how are you going to do this? When she's pressed, a part of her plan comes out, probably the only part that there is, that she's going to fix the roads, fix the bridges, all the infrastructure needs to be fixed. And we're going to create jobs by doing that. But when you're pressed on that, wait a minute, these are public jobs. These are coming from taxpayer-funded jobs. So you're going to increase taxes to pay for all this infrastructure, that you're going to take claim that you created jobs, and in fact, all you're doing is increasing taxes and taking that money to pay for this stuff. Oh no, we're going to give incentives to the private to participate in a profit-making venture, to participate in this stuff, and the claptrap just goes on, and she digs deeper and deeper. She has no clue, she has no answers, she has nothing that she can come forth with, because that lady doesn't know anything about how to run a company, how to run a business, how to run a government. She knows nothing. All you have to do is look in her wake of what she's done in the past, which is very, very, very little. She renamed a post office, a senator of New York. She renamed a street. The other third thing, she only did 3 things. I can't even remember what it was, because it wasn't as important as those first 2. Renaming a post office, what an accomplishment. And I was elected Twice. Oh, great. 66% voted for me the second. Oh, great. 66% of liberal New York voters voted for you, who probably have never voted on the other side of the ticket ever in their lives. I mean, you know, what an accomplishment. You're a loser. Then she burns, she's under fire when she lands in Bosnia, which turned out to be a lie. What a surprise. You know, everything about her. The Libya fire, Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood upside down, Syria upside down, ISIS, all this stuff. What kind of accomplishment does she have as Secretary of State? And then she trotted out Madeleine Albright at her convention to give a little speech. What a Secretary of State she was. But let's jump to New Hampshire during the nomination process with Hillary Clinton up there giving a speech, and then Madeleine Albright chimes in and says, any woman that doesn't vote for Hillary Clinton, there's a special place in hell for you. Now, these are the type of people that this liberal progressive party attracts. Miserable, sinister, hypocritical people like Madeleine Albright's. Come on, I mean, let's wake up to some extent. Let's get a Donald Trump in there, somebody who is not a politician, somebody that you can't really buy, somebody that knows how to do some things, somebody that already has very strong relationships with parts of the world from a business standpoint, so the door's open to him to get some things done, negotiate, do whatever needs to be done. He can handle the Chinese. I think one of his biggest tenants at one of his towers in New York is a bank from China, one of the biggest going. And the man is a success. Now you can say, oh, well, he was bankrupt. This is the mainstream media taking things out of context. The man leases out his name because he has a name that's attractive to businesses. So they make a deal with him, they use his name, and then maybe a couple of those businesses had to file for bankruptcy because they were poorly managed or whatever. But Donald Trump had little to do with that. But the mainstream media is going to spread that into he's a failure, when in fact, I don't know how many failures fly around in their own 757 or fly around their own choppers. I see black choppers, I see white choppers with Trump on the side of them. I guess he has a fleet of those. But that airplane ain't no slouch, I'll tell you that. And there's not many business people. There's not many leaders of countries that have a jet that nice. Now, I'm not saying toys and everything are the way to, you know, determine if a guy is a success or not. But let me tell you something. Obama doesn't have his own little jet. Never did have. He has the American jet that he's going to lose come next January. And that's going to just about kill him, because every day, if you notice, that guy has to fly someplace to act like a big cheese, a king arriving in town, disrupts the whole community, stops traffic. I mean, just snarls everything left and right. But King Obama's arrived, and that's why he goes. And he might arrive at a town to give a speech to 200 people at some little school. It doesn't have to be a massive, important thing that he does. He's just a campaigner in chief. He goes around, spews out all this misinformation, and thinks he's a big cheese doing that stuff, fly around in his own 747. I mean, you know, he just thinks he's really something. He's a fraud. He's a complete fraud. And he goes on a stage the other day, or the press room, whatever, in Washington, D.C., with the Prime Minister, Feeley, from Singapore. And during a gathering of news press conference, I guess, with a foreign state there, they're supposed to be talking about a trade deal that they're working on. And what does Obama do? He takes these long-winded explanations of political speeches that he gives, knocking Donald Trump, a nominated person, or the Republican ticket. He's official, he is the nominee, and for a sitting president to knock another party's nominee is just partisan politics to the max, being played by our president. Sitting president is despicable, and then even more worse is to do it in front of a foreign dignitary at a press conference. It's supposed to be for you two to discuss whatever you've been working on. This is a despicable, out of touch political hack. Everything about Obama is politics, 100%. And I would even go further that his real agenda is the destruction of America. He ran that he was going to fundamentally change America. Now let's analyze that a little bit. Back in '08 when he was running, America was the strongest nation in the world. We had the best standard of living. We had the best GNP, I think. We had a solid environment. I know the Democrats, remember, took over control of the House and the Senate in 2006. And this is where the destruction started to come. This is where our problems with Wall Street and the banks, and with Chris Dodd and Barney Frank trying to shove loans down people's throats for 125% of value you could borrow on your house. That's a Santa Claus gift, okay? If you have a house worth $100,000, they're going to let you borrow $125,000 against it. You don't have to prove any income or anything. God forbid, if you were in a minority, that would be discrimination if they asked you for any proof on anything you said. So they were playing a big giant Santa Claus act, giving away thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to people that they couldn't even afford the $100,000 house. And at the end of the day, we collapsed. The entire banking industry had to go through a huge revival, bailout, if you will. So did everything Obama has done and touched, and everything the liberals have done and touched, has been devastation. That's all these people know how to do, is they give everything away, free ride, free this, free college, everything free, free, free. Just vote here with this D over here. Anybody with a name and a D on the ballot, you need to vote for them. And this is what you end up with. Look around the world, you see Greece, you see Iceland, you see Italy. All these countries with these liberal policies have been suffering financially for years, and they're going broke. They are broke. And then you have Germany. You have all these refugees flooding across their borders, I think to the tune of 1 million or better. And then you have all these rapes going on in the country. In France, you have these killings from ISIS operatives, and God forbid if I say Muslims, but that's what they are. There's whole sections of the country that are controlled by Muslims. They're losing their country. Same thing happening in England. The other day, I think in London, there was a stabbing over there, 1 lady dead, I think 5 injured. I mean, this is the type of world we're turning into because we're allowing the terrorists and these fanatics to take over civilized society. And as a society that wants to get along and live, we need to exterminate these people. Now that doesn't sound very nice, but that's the only pill you can take to get rid of this disease. These people, they're not right in the mind. They've been brainwashed into this ideology. And they think that if they strap bombs to their children, that they're gonna, be rewarded in the hereafter with 72 virgins or whatever crap that they believe in is crap. And we have to face what is happening. What does Hillary, this candidate for president, want to do? She wants to let 550% more of these people into the country. Why are we importing people when we don't have jobs for the people that are here? And why would we import people without knowing who they are? I mean, these people are coming from terrorist countries. And the garbage pails, I understand, by the border coming in from like Mexico are stuffed full of passports and other documentation from these foreign terrorist countries. Why is all this documentation in the trash cans? Because the people coming into America, they don't want that documentation on them because they probably could do a check and find out they're terrorists. No, so they just throw it away. And when you have leaders or misleaders, whatever you want to call them, like a Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, who's out to fundamentally change America, allowing these types of people into the country free and clear, is just a policy that's doomed for a huge failure. And it's going to ruin our country. Obama tried to fundamentally change America, the greatest country in the world, and I guess he's having great success at doing that, because we sure have changed. He offered us hope and change. Well, we've had change, and now we have no hope. So this has been the most deplorable 8 years of administration I've ever witnessed. And I've lived through a few doozies. I think Clinton only had 4 years. Not Clinton, Carter only had 4 years. Clinton, as a matter of fact, never would have had the first 4 years if it wasn't for a guy named Perot. And the same thing goes for his second term. Perot got a substantial amount of the Republican vote away from the Republican candidate by running as an independent. And that allowed Clinton to get elected twice. It's the only way he became president. He was the first president, I think, to ever not even get the popular vote. At any rate, that's what you get, and you never hear the mainstream media talking about that. And now we have the wife of that guy running for president, which is just never happened before in the history, where you have a president and his wife ends up running as president. Not in America, I mean the Philippines and other places, I guess stuff like that's happened. But you know, what are the qualifications of this Hillary Clinton? This story that Bill Clinton put out at the convention was pure friction, written by a novelist, I guess, because it was pure garbage. It was malarkey about, oh, the best memory he has of his wife is her on all fours putting contact paper in Chelsea's bureau drawers at her new college dorm at Stanford in her first semester. I mean, you want to throw up. And then you get Chelsea Clinton doing a speech at his mother's convention, and she talks about, oh, when she come home from school to the dinner table, they'd sit down, and the first question that mommy and daddy would ask her is about how did things go at school today. They wanted to hear everything that happened at school. You know, that was the most important thing. The family there, Bill and Hillary raising their daughter Chelsea. You know, that was the first part of the conversation. Well, if Bill Clinton was ever at home for any of these dinners she's referring to, I guess all the bimbos he'd been chasing around that day had been tired or whatever. But, you know, it's just despicable crap that never happened, these phony Clinton stories. I was talking to a lady in a fair the other day, and she said, why don't you raise the tax on this and that, because that might be a good way to lower the deficit. And I mean, who is this lady? I want her name and number. You're a phony. None of these people exist. They love to talk like that. And it's all a bunch of baloney. But anyways, give us a call here, 702-493-5222. Let us know what your solutions are for this mess we've gotten ourselves into. I think our #1 solution to get rid of the parties sounds like a huge solution. Oh, you're never going to get that done. Why? Why can't we do a voter referendum, ballot initiative, or even petition the Supreme Court to do away with these political parties? What do? Everything they do is against the American people. So what do we need them for? They don't produce anything. They just redistribute wealth. They're pathetic. Our forefathers even warned us about the cancer that political parties represent, and they didn't provide for them in the Constitution. At the time, they probably thought that was good enough so that they wouldn't surface, but they failed to realize anything not enumerated in the Constitution, they were leaving it to the states. So here come the states, and being led by a bunch of other, incompetents or whatever, they start making their own rules and regulations, and they start allowing these political parties to surface. Exactly what our founding fathers were warning against. So now we have political parties in every state. Now you let the states suffer with their parties, whatever they may be, but when it gets to a federal election, then somehow they've let this political morass dribble over into a president, and it's only the president where these fancy comes into play. Playing off the states. That's where their power comes from, by groups of all the states. But it's just a way of getting around things. And it doesn't work. It's still corruption. It's still these political organizations that are corrupt. And we have to do away with them. And that, you'll see right off the bat. Well, then how do you get people elected? You vote for them. That's how. You don't need these political parties to endorse people. Get rid of the parties, and what are you going to do? Smith will run against Jones, and may the best person win. That's all. You vote for the person, not for a party. And then if that should ever come to pass, you're going to end up with a House of Representatives that doesn't have an aisle. There is no aisle. Everybody is who they are. They represent their constitution, their state constituents, and that's who they represent. And no parties. That's it. It's out. So you'll have a much different government. You're not going to be subject to these entrenched power people that are only hungry to keep power to their party. Get rid of the parties. Now, if a person, a congressman, a senator, whatever your title is, you want to get reelected, you have to deliver on your promises you made to get reelected, or you won't get reelected. And that's the next thing. We have to limit the amount of time that these people can spend in office so that you don't end up with these turtles and dinosaurs like Harry Reid's and Mitch McConnell's and Jim Byrd and all these despicable old senators and congressmen that they get carried off the floor in stretchers because they hang on to power for so long and they don't know what else to do, so they just hang on to power because that's all they got going on. We need some new blood, fresh blood. Every cycle we need to elect new leaders, really, and not have these paid people hang on to power thinking that and the whole way that the parties do things, you see, they create these things where they appoint the heads of this committee, the heads of that committee. It's all controlled by parties. Do away with the damn parties and you will improve this government vastly, vastly. Then you end up with people that maybe the other people, like the senators, the congressmen, they make an election of who's to run for this party, this organization, this committee rather, and that's how they're selected. They're not selected by these entrenched, established party leaders. We've got to get rid of that. The party is corrupt. So that's the one way to do it. We have to take this, we implement it, we do it, like I said, through ballot initiative, whatever it takes, folks. If everybody would join the herd or organizations like this, get together, talk about this, and let's get it done. And you'll see a vast, vast improvement in this government. Just get rid of the parties and you'll see this thing sing. And then there's some other things we can do. Another one of our recommendations or solutions is to get rid of the income tax, stop taxing, penalizing income. We tax consumption. So when you make your money, you make 100% of what you make, that's yours. Now you decide what to do with it. Most people work to pay for what they need in life, and maybe if they're productive, they have something left over so they can buy something they want. Well, if they decide to buy something they want, they're going to pay tax on that to the federal government, and that replaces the income tax. So all that revenue, if you could pass the tax tomorrow, national sales tax, you would do away with withholding and everything else the same very day. Very, very easy to do. Most business computers and stores and point of sale all have software in them right now that they could very easily add a national sales tax in there. The computer's set up. You just need to put the percentage in there. And then every sale from that point on, X amount, let's say 17, whatever percent it is, doesn't matter for the purpose of this conversation, but every time you buy a car, you buy this, you buy that, 20% of that sale goes to the government. And that's to replace the income tax. And now what are you left with? It's up to you if you pay taxes, because if you don't want to pay tax, don't buy anything. Now how many people are going to be able to do that? And the structure's there, the regulations there, the collection process is there, everything's there. Stop penalizing income and start taxing consumption. And this country would explode, because now you get tax revenue anytime someone buys something, including dope dealers, All the people that are underground right now that don't pay any taxes at all would all come in, and production would explode, because now entrepreneurs would have a reason to go out and build something, find a better mousetrap or whatever, and put people to work, and the whole economy would just explode with a consumption tax. And that we need to clamor for that also. And here again, if we had a big herd of people with one basic cause, we could make a big dent in getting that type of stuff done. If the people of this country would demand that we go to a sales tax, and as far as regulations go, you know, anything, oh, it's a big, you know, you got to go through all this to get it set up and this and that. No, you don't. You just stop the withholding, start the national sales tax. In the same hour, this can all be implemented and done, period. And from that point on, you will just see that the coffers of the United States government will overflow, and we maybe can reduce some of the other taxes that they charge that they don't like to talk about at election time. Gasoline tax, and road tax, and this tax, and that tax, you know, all the federal crap they throw on you. Well, we need government money. We need some things that the government does. I think we need an army and air force and all that to protect our interests as far as it relates to other countries who will try to attack us. That's a government job. Probably controlling the aircraft that has, they can fly all over the place, so it's hard to have any state regulation on them, so I probably need to have federal oversight there. So there's some things that the government does rather well, and there's some things that they try to do every time they overstep their real authority, try to do something like regulate the size of the drink, you know, things of that nature. They just fail because that stuff doesn't work. And government has to realize they have their duties to do. Anything over and above that is an abuse of power, and they have to learn to live with what they're supposed to be doing, and don't infringe upon the rights of the states. I think that this country always needs to, however many states there end up being, right now there's 50, but I think those states are very important. A state government should have sovereignty. It should never ever be interfered with from another state in any respect. And if there's a discrepancy or a conflict between one state or another, then that's another job for the federal government to oversee that and make sure that doesn't happen. Now, a case I'm very familiar with in trust law is that states control their trust law. Every state competes with other states for this lucrative market of having a trust created within your borders and governed by your laws and your statutes that you enacted as public policy to create these trusts. A trust is something that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, way before there was ever in America, and I think it was founded on the principle that these wars that the world would occasionally have, like the Roman days, you're a warrior, you go off to war, you don't know if you're going to come back or not. So what you do is you have appoint someone as a trustee, and you give them, title your assets to that particular person to hold them for you should you be able to come back. If you can't come back, then you give the trustee designation of who your heirs are and what he's to do with your property should you not return. And that's the whole principle behind a trust. And as times go on, trusts have evolved into what they have turned into now, which every state enacts their own trust law to be competitive with other states. Some states, like supposedly Nevada, tries to be the #1 state for trust creation. Because what happens to the state, you have a process set up to be able to create these trusts. That makes money for the state, believe it or not. You have companies that come in to do this, depending on your trust laws, and you try to compete with the other surrounding states to get as much as this capital housed in your state as you can. Creates jobs. And the baby boomers from now for the next 10 years are estimated to be in position to inherit from 40 to $100 trillion. These are the baby boomers inheriting from their parents that are up there, so they're dying off and they're leaving their children these trusts. And there's trillions of dollars involved. Now that's very, very beneficial to whatever state can get the lion's share of these trusts housed within their borders. That's a gold mine for them. People have to be able to administer these trusts. There's investments made from the capital. You don't just stick it somewhere and let it sit there and gather dust. You have to put it to use. So this whole industry is created by the fact that these trusts are within a state's borders. So it's very productive. It's very beneficial to the state, and consequently it's beneficial to the taxpayers, because if the states are making money for their coffers this way, that lessens the burden on making taxes from other ways from your constituents. So it's very productive for everyone all around. So it's good basic law, and it should never be infringed upon or ruined, like some organizations, especially in government, have a propensity for ruining things. This is what they do. They're destruction. They don't know what they're doing. If they're going to have a vibrant trust market, you have one thing that you're dependent upon, and that's the statutes and the laws, if you will, of what creates a trust in that particular state. And these are enacted by the legislature of the states. They become statutes as such, and that's how you know what your trust is that you're creating. What are the laws? Well, there's one thing missing there. Laws need to be upheld and need to be enforced. Well, if a court doesn't want to enforce something, they ignore it. So if you have a judiciary like we have here in Nevada that's completely corrupted, you're going to have a judge just try to take over a trust so that he can pay lawyers who turn around and contribute to his campaign. So if you have a corrupted judiciary, you're never going to have a vibrant trust market, or everybody operating as a trust company, selling and creating these trusts, getting paid money to do so, to protect the wishes of the settlers that make these trusts. They're selling a fraud. Because if you're in a court system such as Nevada, you can't depend upon your trust being protected, because the laws and the statutes on the book are just merely ignored by these black-robed judges abusing their power and not obeying the law. Judges are supposed to follow the law. Well, I can guarantee you in Nevada they don't. I have first-hand experience with that. Even more so than just having a trust in Nevada. I have experience. Trust in New Hampshire was stolen by judges in Nevada. And to this day, they continue to attempt to steal money from an out-of-state trust. It can't be done. This is unconstitutional, what Nevada judges are doing. Unconstitutional. And that is pathetic. What kind of a judiciary is this? And Nevada passes itself off as being the #1 destination to create a trust in? That's a fraud. That's an absolute lie. And anybody listening that has a trust in this state, you better call your trust person and check on it. And check call this show, 493-5222. I'll tell you all about it, the questions you need to ask. I know the answer, and they'll try to obfuscate the answer and not answer you, because they want you to keep your trust. They want more trust created, so they'll lie to you. And if you don't have a judiciary that's going to uphold the law, you got nothing. And that goes to everything about this state. This state's judicial system is in deep doo-doo. Deep doo-doo. And I don't know if it's possible to straighten it out. I guess it's going to take a couple very high-powered RICO suits to do it. And that's a Racketeer Influence Corruption Organization Act, passed by Congress in 1970, and it was passed with the intent of trying to put the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, whatever you want to call it, out of business. So it's a very, very powerful act that if a company, organization, people get together, create a scheme to break the law, like racketeering, and they have a pattern of doing this type of activity, then if they are in a situation where they're breaking laws, ignoring laws, to rip off people or businesses or trusts or whatever, that they're violating federal statutes and they're breaking the law. And they need to be stopped. And the best way to stop them is this Congress Act, under RICO they call it for short. Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization. Now if you have a judge, for example, that signs an order that is a fraudulent order and sent to a bank saying that, swearing that a cashier's check that the bank had written, cashier's check, cash equivalency, someone went into a bank and paid for a check with cash, and now the only obligation the bank has at that point is to honor that check when it's presented to them by the holder. And they can't not honor it because they've already been paid to pay that check. So they've been given the money. All they have to do is give it back upon presentation. A pretty damn simple concept, okay? But when you throw in the mix of invalid courts, courts operating illegally, judges wearing black robes that think they can do anything they want to do, they can actually steal money under the color of law, these are very serious, serious violations. And any court system that looks the other way, any other judges that looks the other way, that doesn't report this kind of an abuse when they become aware of it, they're just as guilty, I think, of the people that are doing the crime. So if you're a judge and you see another judge doing this, you know, what does Nevada do? They play the good old boy system and they just look around each other. They never see any of this corruption because they're all in on the same game plan. This is very, very corrupt system here in Nevada, and it needs to stop. Or, I don't know, what the future, I don't have to know exactly on what day it's going to all collapse, but I'll tell you what, the day's coming, because you can only afford so much of this, and pretty soon it's going to be all out there, and it's very, very detrimental to a free society. You can't have this going on. When you're elderly, you make a trust. You're trying to protect your assets that you've worked your whole life for. You want perhaps, let's say, your children to benefit. In my particular case, my mother left the home that we've had in the family for over 50 years. It was a summer home on a lake, and she wanted her heirs to be able to enjoy that property after she was gone. She hoped to be able to leave enough money and assets in another trust to be able to pay property taxes and things like that for as long as possible. You know, she just wanted her family to be able to enjoy what her and my dad made. And that's rightfully theirs. They could give it to a cat if they wanted to, but they chose to give it to their children. And so there you go. That's a very normal American wish to have. And now what happened in our particular case, we got a despicable, corrupt judge in Nevada that has nothing to do with the home in New Hampshire whatsoever. There was a case filed, a simple case to get access to records to see if there was a misappropriation going on, whereby the person that was named as trustee under very suspicious circumstances, but nevertheless had paperwork showing that they were the trustee, was using money from the trust for her own purposes. So that's misappropriation. That's stealing money. Anyways, once the records were finally obtained, and the reason it took so long was because the judge was failing to do his job of compelling this person to produce the records. He just kept extending discovery, like 4 times, gave him extra time. To do what? All we were asking for was a bank statement. Well, when we finally got the bank statement through our own endeavors, no thanks to the court, we were able to prove beyond any reasonable doubt whatsoever that indeed there was misappropriation going on. So this corrupt judge couldn't call this misappropriation what it was, which is a breach of fiduciary duty, couldn't call it that because the person that did the breaching didn't have any money to pay her lawyer, and the lawyer was pleading with the judge, please, please, judge, help me get paid because my client didn't have any money. So the judge and the lawyer get together and develop a scheme to steal money from that house. That's where the money was at. It was in this house. So they were told that they can't do this in the court here. We're told that they don't have the constitutional right to do anything about that house. Well, they got to do something because they got to get the money so that they can get campaign contributions and support the system. So the judge dictates that the house be sold. Well, I'm the trustee. After my sister was removed for theft, I went back, I sold the house and put the money into a cashier's check, which once a cashier's check's gotten, nothing can be done to it. The bank has to pay that check. Well, the judge does a crooked, illegal thing, a Class A felony, signs an order making the losing defense attorney sign an affidavit saying that he had possession of the check when it was lost, destroyed, or stolen. That's an out-and-out lie. That's fraud. The judge knew it was fraud when he signed the order. The bank knew it was fraud because the bank knew I had the check. I'm the one they gave it to. I'm the one that gave them the money. I'm the remitter. So there's no questions here. All of this stuff was done illegally because everybody knew what the truth was. But they had to get the money so they could split it up. Well, I wouldn't turn the check over to the judge, so he swears out an arrest warrant on me to arrest me for contempt of court because I won't give him my mother's assets so he can squander it to his lawyer buddies that turn around and contribute back to him campaign contributions. So I won't go for that. And as trustee protecting my parents' wishes, I have no obligation to follow a court order that has no jurisdiction over a foreign trust. So I'm following the law and I'm protecting the trust, which is my obligation. The judge is breaking the law. And that's what they do. They're corrupted criminals in the state of Nevada. At least my experience with the judges I've dealt with are. So this is what we're up against, folks. And I just tell you this because you have to be aware. You have to know this stuff goes on. And we have to do something about it. When this type of illegal activity goes on, especially by a court, we need to wake up and do something, people. We can't elect people that lie to us like Hillary Clinton. We gotta stop this crap. This is not hard. It has to be stopped. When the people see stuff like this going on, we have to demand. To start with, like in this case, we need to uphold the law. That's all. That's not hard. The statutes are there. Just follow them. You put this statute in front of a judge, he ignores it. You tell a judge you don't have subject matter jurisdiction. I don't care about that. Well, what are you? You're a thief.